Text by S. E. Hinton. Day 8. I stood there for a second, not believing it. This was the last straw. I'd put up with a lot today, and this punk pulling a gun on me was the last straw. Who the heck did he think he was? A white-hot rage flashed over me, and I slammed across the room at him like a bull out of a pen. He fired once, but he didn't get a chance to fire again because I yanked that gun out of his hand and backhanded him with it. Blood gushed out of his nose as he tripped backward across the top coffee table. He struggled to get back up, half caught between the sofa and the table, until he looked at me. Then he froze. I had both hands on the gun, aiming dead on. A .22's kick ain't that bad. It doesn't need a two-handed aim. But I was shivering all over, and I didn't want to miss. His face was gray, looking at the end of the gun. I was going to kill him. I wanted that turkey dead. The trigger was warm under my finger. This was going to feel good. Oh, God, Tex, don't, Lem groaned. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him shut his eyes and pray. My heart was pounding. The Chinesey guy was chattering. Look, man, everything is cool. Just leave. Everything is cool. I didn't pay any attention. If he started anything, I'd kill him, too. I'd like to kill him. I'd like to kill them all. Kelly was too frozen to wipe the blood off his face. It seemed like I had just seen a face like that, waiting for something terrible, the color of ashes. Texas, Lem begged. Don't do it, kid. Come on, let's leave. Not before I settled this. My finger quivered. Then I wondered if anybody'd show up at his funeral, if he had a girlfriend, a mother, a brother. As soon as I thought that, I knew I wasn't going to kill him, so there wasn't any sense in sticking around. We're leaving, I said. You try and stop us, and I'll blow you away, man. Okay, it's cool. Everything's cool. Kelly's friend went to help him up. Lem and me backed out the door and ran down the steps. When we got to the car, I realized I still had the dang gun, and I threw it down the gutter. That is a real class set of people you hang around with, Lem. Real nice guys. My voice was shaking. Lem yanked the car into starting and squealed off. Man, I didn't know anything like that was going to happen. Honest, Tex. He was on something. Holy cow. Really, kid. I've been doing this stuff for over a year now, and I never saw nobody pull a gun before. God almighty. What if he hadn't missed? He didn't. What? I said he didn't miss. He shot me, and it hurts like heck. For a while it'd been numb. Now it wasn't numb. I never thought about bullets being hot before. Lem looked over at me and jumped when he saw the red stain seeping through my fingers. Blood was all over. It showed up bright on the car's white interior. It hadn't been real noticeable on my navy blue sweatshirt. Oh, shoot. Lem slammed on the brakes and stared at me. The car behind us honked loudly and we started up again with a sickening jerk. Oh, shoot. This is great. This is just great. What's with you? I asked angrily. What did Lem have to be mad at me about? He goes for a year without any trouble, and my first time helping him in the wonderful world of drug dealing, some loony shoots me. Besides, I was starting to feel funny, and it scared me. Now I got to take you to the hospital, and they'll want to ask questions and call the cops, and that's all I need right now. A bunch of cops. This is just great. We pulled up at an intersection, but I think I would have jumped out of the car then if it'd been doing 90 down the freeway. Go ahead, Lem. Dump me. Everybody else has, and I don't know why you should be any different. I was shouting at the top of my lungs. Now get the heck out of here. I slammed the door. I looked around. Where did I go from here? There was a shopping center across the parking lot. I spotted a phone on a wall. I wanted to call somebody. I felt really funny. There had to be somebody to call. I got to the phone, staggering just a little bit. Nobody paid much attention, except for a lady tightening her grip on her purse. Somebody going into the grocery store stopped, stared, and went on. I think they were used to staggering kids around there. I had trouble getting my quarter out of my pocket. There was blood over it, all over my hand. I looked down, and blood was splattering on the cement in a slow drip. I was scared. I wanted Mason. I couldn't think clear. Too many things had happened too fast. Mason would know what to do. I got the quarter in the slot and realized I couldn't remember my phone number. I never called it that much. I decided to call Johnny instead. He'd know it. Hello? It was Jamie. Her voice sounded so good to me I wish I could kiss it. Hey, Jamie, this is Tex. She paused. Yeah? Yeah, listen, do you know my phone number? I can't remember it. You sound funny. Are you drunk? No, I've been shot. Listen, I want to call Mason. I got to talk to Mason, so tell me the number. It starts off 366. In a very small voice, Jamie said, Did you say you've been shot? Yeah, some doper friend of Lem's. I heard her swallow. Are you going to die? I thought for a minute. Well, I don't know. I didn't think so at first. 22 bullets are pretty little. But I don't know. I'm feeling really strange. I heard her screaming. She was hollering at somebody. Then Cole's voice said, "Is this some kind of joke?" I stared at the phone in my hand. I started to say, "I ain't laughing," but instead I said, "No, sir." Then, "Listen, let me talk to Jamie again, okay? I paused, trying to figure out what I wanted to say. "Tex, where are you?" "In town," I said, a little puzzled by why he would want to know. "Where in town?" He sounded like he was at the end of his patience. Well, so was I. I might be dropping dead any second for all I knew, and I didn't want to waste my time talking to Cole Collins. "I'm in a shopping center." I looked around. "Down where the interstate crosses the ribbon. You know, across from that bridge motel, or big motel, that looks like a castle." My mouth was so dry, it was hard to talk. I was really thirsty. "Can I text?" "Hang up the phone." I hung it up without thinking. Then I stood and stared at it. I tried fishing around in my pockets for another quarter. I couldn't seem to get my hand in my pocket. Darn him! I felt like crying. My last quarter, and I wasn't going to get to talk to Jamie or Mason or anybody. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder. It was Lem. "Hey," I said dizzily, "you got a quarter?" I almost pitched forward. Lem caught me and propped me up against the wall next to the phone partition. "Come on, kid, hang in there. We'll go to the hospital, okay? In 1 minute, okay?" I blinked at the fuzzy parking lot and wondered what God was going to look like. "Lem, would you call Mason for me? I want to tell him something." My voice wasn't much more than a whisper. "Sure, stay right there." "I want a Coke," I said, yawning. I heard the coins dropping into the phone. Good. I really wanted to talk to Mason. A couple of older ladies walked by and stared at me. I stared back. My knees started to buckle, and I slid down the wall and keeled over on the cement. They went squawking off into the grocery store. "Connie, listen. No, listen. Get rid of everything." I said everything. "I had some trouble at Kelly's. I know what's been paid for. Get rid of it." "Honey, all of it. Then go over to your sister's. Don't get hysterical. It's probably nothing bad. But get rid of everything, okay? I'll call you later." Oh, golly. He hadn't called Mason. Gets me shot and goes off and leaves me, and now he's calling his wife while I'm probably dying. "How you doing, Tex?" Lem stuck his head around. "Oh, shoot." He was kneeling beside me, prying my hands off my side. A bunch of people came stampeding out of the grocery store. I hated for them to be gawking at me like that. "Did you call an ambulance?" somebody was saying. Lem wadded up the end of my sweatshirt and pressed it over the bullet hole. "No, somebody go ahead and call. Texas, will you quit bleeding?" "That hurts," I said weakly. "Hey, Lem, I want a Coke." "Okay, just a minute." "We'll get you a Coke in a minute." I could already hear an ambulance siren. That was quick. All I could see around me was a sea of feet and legs. "Where's Mason?" Whenever I was scared, Mason was there. "He'll be here pretty soon. I'm going to call him, I swear." Somebody else was shouting, "Get back! Everybody back up!" And somebody else was putting a coat on me. I was still cold. I felt like I was laying in a cold, damp cave. "My feet are cold." "Yeah, well, you got holes in your boots." I stared at Lem, puzzled. He wasn't making any sense. "You better leave," I said, making an effort to think straight. "You're going to get in trouble." "Nah, it's cool." He dropped his voice. "Just tell them it was about a money loan, okay?" "Was it?" Or what was? "The fight." "Okay." My foot was going to sleep. I was laying on it funny. "Did you call Mason yet?" "I will, I promise." He was getting blurrier and blurrier, and I couldn't see him too good anymore. "Tell Mason." I couldn't remember what I wanted to tell Mason. "I'll tell him. Just hang on, will you, Tex? Don't die on me, kid. Hang on." He sounded like he was crying, but he was so far away I couldn't tell. I wish I could see Jamie. I'd give anything to see Jamie. What was going on? This morning had been pretty normal. I wanted to ask Lem what happened, but I don't know if he heard me. I don't know if I said the words. Chapter 11. "Mace," I said weakly, "would you get that rock off me?" I tried pushing it off myself, but I couldn't seem to move my arm. "It's not a rock, it's a bandage. And don't move around. Your tubes come loose." I tried to focus my eyes. It seemed like I was surrounded by dangling bottles and ropes of tubes. I could barely see Mason. He looked strange. "Are you mad at me?" I asked. I couldn't remember what had happened. "No, not at you. You didn't shoot yourself, did you?" "Oh yeah, somebody shot me." Slowly, Mason's face came into focus. He looked strange. There was something wrong. "Oh yeah, it was a Band-Aid. Did somebody shoot you too?" "Shoot you too?" I whispered. It seemed like he laughed or something before he said, "No, I beat the crap out of Lem Peters, but he didn't exactly stand still and let me. Go back to sleep, Texas. They won't let me stay with you if you keep talking. You're supposed to rest." "How would he beat the crap out of Lem?" "Did he get your samples switched?" I mumbled. How did anybody expect me to sleep with this big rock on my side? It hurt like heck. "When can I see Jamie?" I asked. "Later." I wanted to ask when later was, but the bed seemed to tilt and slide me off right into darkness. I was miserable when I woke up next. I was tired and I hurt and remembered what had happened. I wished I had gone ahead and died. The nurse told me I couldn't have any company except immediate family. I wasn't real sure at that point exactly who that was, but it probably wasn't Jamie. Then they let a cop in to question me. I did what Lem said to, told the story exactly like it happened, except that Lem and Kelly were arguing over a money loan instead of a dope deal. The cop didn't seem real excited about it. I asked him if this was going to be in the paper, and he said probably not, since I didn't die. Apparently kids are getting shot all the time. That was okay with me. I was a little sick of being in the news. I'm going to tell you about your mother. Pop didn't ask me if I wanted to hear it. I didn't. I thought we were doing all right, ignoring the subject, pretending like nothing had happened. Neither Pop or Mason had mentioned why I was here or why I had run out of the office 2 days ago. One of them had been here every time I could have a visitor, but the conversation never got past how I was feeling. I always said, okay, and didn't mention being tired and sore and depressed and confused. If I didn't mention it, maybe it'd go away. I've already told Mason how it was, and I figured the truth would be better than what you might be thinking. I don't know. I've managed to live without the truth all this time. I could get along without it now, I thought, but I didn't say anything. It was while I was in prison, he began finally. Huh? I figured that much out myself. I glanced down at Pop. He was starting the calluses on his fingers, like maybe they'd come up with a solution for all this. He was getting bald on top. All that fun, that way he had of being happy with anything, had been knocked right out of him, like air after a stomach punch. I almost felt sorry for him. You got to understand that Claire was completely against that bootlegging business I was mixed up in. She never was the kind of person who'd tell somebody what to do or not to do. She just said, don't expect me to be sitting twiddling my thumbs while you're sent up. If you're dumb enough to do that stuff, it'll be you that pays for it, not me. Well, shoot. I knew she was only part kidding, but I wasn't figuring on getting caught. Mason had come along and we could use the money, and I was making good money. Pop stopped, took a deep breath, and said, the money, heck. I've always been able to do without money. The truth is, it was easy and fun and had a nice outlaw kick to it. My poor daddy, the preacher, he never understood why I got such a kick out of breaking the rules. I always did, though, till I found out what happened to you if you got caught. I stared at the bunch of flowers on the windowsill. My homeroom class had sent them. I had felt funny, getting flowers, but I didn't like looking at them. Did like looking at them. If I looked at them hard enough, maybe I wouldn't hear anything. Anyway, I did get caught and took my rap plus a couple others, so my so-called friends decided to dump on me. And there was Claire, 19 years old with a baby, and me off to the state pen. When she got scared, it came out mad. She always tried to hide it, being mad. I knew it, but I don't think she ever did. Sounds like Mason, I said. I felt real remote. None of this had anything to do with me. None of the people in this story had anything to do with me. Yeah, Mason is a lot like she was, proud as Lucifer, a bulldog for grudges. She never spoke to her parents again after they tried to break us up. Bull-headed. You're the one that looks like her, though, Pop said simply, except her eyes were gray. She was real good with animals, especially horses. She always said they talked to her, and she'd get mad when I laughed. My wound gave a sudden throb, and I had to bite back a gasp. And then I said, so, she screwed around on you while you were in prison? I felt like Pop looked at me. I don't want to hear talk like that, Texas. I've already belted Mason once about that, and I'd hate to hit a hurt kid. But you watch your mouth when you talk about your mama. His tone was as mild as ever, but I was startled into staring at him and saw that he meant it. He belted Mace? He never hit Mason. He'd only hit me once. Suddenly I remembered something else, walking out of the police station with him and him saying savagely, if I ever thought you was going to end up like... That was when he hit me. And all this time, I thought he meant if he was going to end up like me. I know who your daddy was. It was almost like he'd read my mind. He was a rodeo rider. I haven't seen him on the circuit, so somebody's husband or daddy probably shot him a long time ago. Yellow-eyed tomcat. He was hanging around her even before. The cold hate in his voice turned blood to ice. He could hate somebody like that all these years and not hate me, too. There she was, 19 and alone, working as a waitress, while I sat up there in the pen with the worst trash that ever walked the earth due to my own stupidity. Oh, I wanted her back, even when she told me she was pregnant. She hadn't really cared anything about him. I knew that. It was just a get-even thing with me that she was sorry for, later. Pop looked at me quickly. I didn't realize I had made any noise. She never regretted having you, Tex. Don't think that. She loved you same as she did Mason. You could tell that half puzzled him. Even now, he continued. So we moved up here where nobody knew us, started all over. We should have been happy. It never was the same, though. She always sort of expected me to let her down, and I never did really trust her again. That night she walked out in the snow. We were supposed to go to a Christmas dance, and in the last minute I wouldn't go. Said I didn't feel like it. But I just didn't want other guys looking at her, dancing with her. I couldn't stand it, even though I knew I could trust her. It was like they'd know, somehow. She said she was going if she had to walk. She knew what I was thinking. She did walk, bull-headed. I followed later, and we danced a while, and went over to some friends, and then went home. I thought it was just a regular winter cold. The next day, and so did she. He stopped. He was through. All this time, the way you always paid more attention to Mason than me, was this the reason? I sounded real casual, barely curious, not like I was holding my breath, which I was. I wanted him to say no. He'd just always been more trouble than you. Or, no, it just seems like that with the oldest kid. Or, he said, I reckon. In a few minutes, he said, You look wore out, Tex. You better get some sleep. I didn't say anything, and he left. I did go to sleep, but first I pulled the pillow over my face and cried for a long time. Does it hurt much? Johnny asked me. He was the first person to see me after they took off the family-only rule. Not much anymore. I was glad to see him, but I wondered where Jamie was. When I first woke up, it did. Now I'm just sore. I'm glad that they took some of those needles out of me. The doctors say you're going to be okay. That's not what they were telling us when we got to the emergency room the other night. Yeah, I guess I'm lucky it didn't hit anything real important. I didn't know it was a soft-nose 22. Those bullets open up on impact and leave a pretty good-sized hole. You guys were at the emergency room? Was Jamie there too? I wondered, but didn't ask. Yeah, we left for the hospital as soon as Cole called the ambulance and told them where you were. Oh, that was why he wanted me off the phone. Yeah, it's a good thing he called, because you could have bled to death before Lem could get his act together and do something. That's right, Lem had been there. I don't remember much about being in the emergency room, I said. I can remember getting wheeled out of the ambulance, and there were already tubes in my arms and bottles trailing me after me like weird balloons. Somebody stuck a huge needle in my stomach, and I remember thinking it was a strange time giving me a rabies shot, but a doctor told me later they were checking for blood in my stomach. There wasn't any, and apparently that was good. Everything else was fuzzy, just bright lights and people running around sticking me with needles and taking my blood pressure, going into an elevator on a table. Johnny had picked up one of my Western Horseman magazines and thumbed through it. Suddenly, he threw it across the room. You were asking for Jamie, he said. Darn it, Tex. I'm the one that's been your best friend for 5 years. After all we've been through together, and Jamie is just a girl. We all thought you were going to die, and you asked for Jamie? He grabbed a bunch of Kleenex off the nightstand and blew his nose. I looked at him, miserable. And I had thought nothing could make me feel any worse. Johnny. He shook his head. Yeah, I know. I'll understand it someday. That was what Bob says. I know this much, though. Some girl isn't going to make me forget my best friend. I didn't know what to tell him. I reckon only people who have both been snake bit can tell each other how it feels. Well, she's here, Johnny said grudgingly. I wondered guiltily if he knew how bad I wanted to ask. I thought you'd probably want to see her alone, so I'll be going. Hey, man, I said, don't go. He got up, finished wiping his nose. No, I got to. We only get 10 minutes apiece, and Jamie will kill me if I get 1 minute of her time. You'll be back tomorrow? Yeah, sure. Only be careful, Tex. Yeah? Listen, I promised. God, I'd never bug Cole again if you didn't die. And I don't know if I can make it. Jamie came in. She set a box of candy on the nightstand, knocking off the Kleenex. Johnny helped pay for it, but I paid the most, so I got to give it to you. I guess you'll be okay now. I guess so. You glad? Yeah, she said, kind of defiant. I am. You got pretty hysterical when I was talking to you on the phone, I reminded her. She scowled for a second. Well, at least I was calm when we got to the hospital. That's more than I can say for Mason or Johnny. Oh, yeah? I said. Mason hadn't struck me as real shook up. Will Mason get worried? Jamie stared at me. Her eyes were the dark blue of a flower I'd seen somewhere. A little dark blue flower with a face like a pug dog. Didn't anybody tell you? First Mason jumped Lem Peters right there in the waiting room, and the police and the orderlies had to break them up. Then all that time you were being operated on while you were listed as critical, he just sat and wouldn't speak to anybody. When the doctors came out and said you were going to make it, he started crying, and he cried for so long the doctor gave him a shot. Mason went to pieces in front of everybody? I was shocked. Mason had seemed okay when he came to visit, a little tired and quiet, but okay. It was really terrible, and Johnny sat there crying, and Lem Peters was blubbering, and I, about that. Jamie, you want to see the bandage where they took the bullet out? When she leaned over, I slipped my arm around her and pulled her down for a kiss. She kissed me back. I felt pretty good for a sick person. After a little bit, she wiggled loose. Ouch, I said. Sorry, but you were about to get me curious again. Curious? Oh, great, I sighed. Jamie, you think we'll ever get this thing worked out so we'll both be happy? I doubt it. I don't think things ever get worked out. I do love you, though, but I don't think love solves anything. It helps, I said. It helps a whole lot. The door opened. I was expecting to be a little embarrassed if it was Mason. It was Cole. Jamie and I looked at each other, turning red at the same time. What if he'd come in a minute earlier? It's time to go, Jamie. Okay, goodbye, Tex. See you at school. Bye, I said. I watched her hurry through the door. She was going to be the only girl for me, I could tell. I'm glad to hear you're going to be able to go home soon, Cole said. He seemed even bigger, towering over the hospital bed. Boy, if he knew what I'd been thinking about Jamie. Yeah, I said awkwardly. I reckon you probably saved my life, calling the ambulance. I thought he might say, forget it, but he didn't. He said, I hope I never regret it. And he glanced at the door where Jamie had been. No, sir, I said. When he left, I understood how Johnny had felt, making a bargain with God, one you don't know you can keep. Chapter 12. Any mail? Mason asked me. He got home early from work on Tuesdays. He was working in a restaurant in the city. Just a postcard from Johnny and Jamie. They liked Disneyland and were going to see Blackie in San Francisco. I reckon him and Cole are going to bury the hatchet. That sounded like a good way to spend spring break to me. A lot better than dragging you around the house because you weren't supposed to exert yourself. At least I didn't have to stay in bed anymore. I didn't mention the letter I got from Len. Dear Tex, we decided to leave town, and I wanted to tell you I'm sorry about everything. I know Mace said he'd kill me if I ever tried to get in touch with you again, but I'm sorry. Don't tell nobody where we are. Lem. It was postmarked Arizona. I looked down the barrel of my rifle to make sure the sights were clean. Then I started polishing the stock. Going hunting tomorrow? Mason skimmed over the postcard. Going for a walk, and I'll take the gun with me. I ain't going to shoot anything, though. I ain't going to shoot anything ever again. I knew how it felt. Mason poured himself a glass of buttermilk. That was about all he could drink lately, besides water. His stomach had been acting up. Did you see Mr. Kincaid today? He paused, but didn't give me the usual lecture about cleaning guns at the kitchen table. He hadn't given me the usual lecture about anything, ever since I came home from the hospital a month ago. Yeah, Pop drove me over this morning. Mr. Kincaid said he could wait another week for me to start work. That's good. Actually, for a minute I thought I wasn't going to get the job. Mr. Kincaid had said, well, I really need someone right now. My heart sank. The doctors had been real positive about me not lifting or shoveling for another week. There's a lot of lifting and shoveling on a horse farm. Then he said, didn't I see your little brother at the fair a couple years ago? No, sir, I don't have a little brother. But you came up and talked to me after a class once. You've grown. I did like the way you handled your horse. I guess I can wait another week. So it looked like I had the job. Mason was shifting from one foot to another, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how to start. I went on with my gun cleaning. I wasn't expecting him to say anything that meant anything. Ever since I came home from the hospital, we'd all been pretending nothing had happened, that the subject was dropped. Actually, I don't think Pop was pretending. He was forgetting. He doesn't have a very long attention span. But me and Mason just went on being polite to each other, which cut down on the conversation considerably. I find it real hard to live politely. I was tired of pretending, but I didn't know how to start talking to him. Mason always has been real hard to talk to about personal stuff, and to tell somebody you still love them was pretty personal. I didn't know if he even wanted to hear it. Listen, Mason said suddenly, staring hard out the kitchen window. I decided not to go on to college. I stopped, my polish rag in midair. I didn't say anything. I mean, I like working at the steakhouse. I've already got one raise. I can take a course in restaurant management at the junior college in the city. For one split second, I fought to hang on to that polite, impersonal ghost I'd made myself into. Then I jumped to my feet and yelled, "Are you crazy?" That startled Mason so much he jumped. but he always had more self-control than I had, so in a minute he continued. I've thought it all over. I've been around guns too long to be stupid enough to throw one across the room, but I felt like it. I'll tell you what you've thought over, I said, laying the gun down carefully because I wanted so bad to slam it into the floor. You thought that once you get gone, Pop will leave again and I'll be on my own and I can't handle it. Well, I can. But even if I couldn't, Mason, darn it, you've tried to be my father long enough. You don't go to college because of me, and in 2 years you'd hate my guts. Mason tried to go on with his calm, rational pretense, then gave up, the desperation showing plainly on his face. I don't know what to do. I can't go. I can't stay. Sometimes I feel like I really am going to go nuts. I knew how that felt. I knew exactly how it felt. Late at night, lying awake, rehashing everything until my mind was whirling around like a squirrel in a cage. I thought I was going to die or go crazy. But then, in the morning, I'd still be alive, and sometimes the pain seemed a fraction less. I don't know what to do. Sometimes I think nothing is ever going to get worked out. Maybe sometimes things don't work out. I know I'll never figure out the why of a lot of stuff that's happened. Mace, you never read Smokey the Cowhorse, did you? Mason was leaning back against the kitchen sink. Now he glanced over at me and grinned briefly. No. Well, old Smokey, he had some bad things happen to him. Had the heart knocked clean out of him. But he hung on, he came out of it okay. I've been bashed up pretty good, Mason, but I'm going to make it. You know, Mason said slowly, I always thought, if you found out, if you knew Pop wasn't ever going to change, that he didn't care, I thought you'd... Remember that hitchhiker? You said you thought something bad had happened to him? He hated everything and everybody. I thought that's what finding out would do to you. I couldn't stand that, Tex. Pop used to drive me crazy. He treated us so different. I was sure you'd start wondering why, the same as I did. I didn't see how you could help hating everybody if you found out, especially me. I remember that day, in the office. Mason's face, the look on Mason's face before I turned and ran out. I remembered what Jamie had said, that love doesn't solve anything. Maybe. But it helps. I don't hate you, Mace, I said. He nodded, and all at once I realized he was crying. Not making any noise, but crying. I know, he said, clearing his throat huskily. At the hospital, before you went into surgery, you kept saying you had something to tell me. And when the doctors let me see you, for a minute you kept saying, I don't hate you, Mason. I don't hate you. He fell silent. Love ought to be a real simple thing. Animals don't complicate it. But with humans, it gets so mixed up. It's hard to know what you feel, much less how to say it. After a minute, the best I could do was, tell you what, when you go to college, when you go out to the airport, I get to drive, okay? There are a lot of people who go places and people who stay. Okay, Mason said. He turned around and washed a couple of dishes. Then he said, you need somebody to go hunting with tomorrow? He looked at me and absentmindedly added, geez, Tex, you're getting that gook all over the table. I started laughing. In a minute, a slow grin started across Mason's face. Maybe we can go fishing instead, I said. Mason said, okay, so we're going in the morning.